Alright, we are back in the appropriate orientation. Landscape. No, it's just the pre-done links.
We need to stop as soon as we start.
I know, right? Hey, Allie, will you run down and what are the locals like? It's in a can.
It's a very important mission, Allie.
Thanks, Allie.
One
We're on the air.
just one?
Yeah, I think we, yeah, thank you.
Let me repost.
Yeah, it's just
Thanks, guys. Are we on YouTube as well?
Yes.
Well, that's fun.
yeah, you are live on YouTube right now.
Fun. And can you see if anybody is listening yet? Or watching? One person? So, Eva?
There are 4 of us in this room.
Wait a second.
Oh, my hair is so
Sets up their app for this stuff is so.
It's like designed to be as stressful as possible.
Yes.
Right.
That's silly that if you click it, you start the stream in a certain
Thanks,
mode,
Alex.
it's frozen that way.
Yes, take off a wig. If you, because it has to prepare a video. It's not real stream, right? So you can't change the
Yeah,
rest.
that's silly, right?
It's dumb. What's also dumb is that if you schedule a live stream, if you do anything with the live stream on the phone, it takes a picture when you do it. Like when you schedule it, it's like, take a selfie for your live stream.
3, 2, 1, go!
No,
Like,
it's like you're
literally. And you can't change the thumbnail after that. So like, you can't go back and upload a new picture for it. You have to decide then and there what it's going to be, and it's supposed to be a selfie.
Wow. Is anybody else like, watching yet?
Yeah, someone commented that the audio is quiet. It's because we're not speaking to the mic.
loud enough in here.
That is the mic that they're hearing us.
I know, I'm just saying that I'm commenting to them. We were talking amongst ourselves, not to the
Oh.
mic, so that's why you can't hear us well. We weren't projecting. Sorry, you're in it now.
No. I just can't touch my hair.
It's the whole world will see. It's okay, they'll be distracted by my hair.
True.
They just looked at me in frame and I was like, what the hell?
Actually, the corner of the mic in frame is blocking most of my face. It's kind of nice.
Okay.
Yeah, it's fine.
I haven't gotten over in the last live stream, someone was like, wow, Charles looks like a giant. I'm like, it's just perspective, guys. Okay? Shush.
Charles is 6'9".
Yeah.
It's like a Viking.
Yeah.
So what do you think? Should we,
Yeah, let's get
Should we do
those.
this?
I got those links up, so anyone who sees them should join us soon.
okay.
We'll file them.
Right, slowly file their way in. To all of those already filed in, cheers and thanks for watching and checking it out today. We have a studio audience, some on screen and some off screen.
You might see a little shuffling back and forth or something like that. Please ignore the people behind the curtains.
Our listeners do like when we say what we're drinking, so we should go around and give it real quick.
Oh, this is the Locals Light American Lager from Shorts. It's much lighter than my usual choice of beer. I'm usually not a lager person.
Is that what I have too? I have no idea what I'm drinking.
Is it the same
That
color?
board, everybody.
Is it the same color?
It looks the same color, but we had a couple of light ones.
Yeah, I think that's the Locals Light, and I think
And they all
early-
kind of tasted the same.
yeah, I think that's the Sam Adams Summertime Lager.
Okay.
Very similar beers.
I've got the Ironfish Maple Finish for
I think that's it. Shall we do this for real?
all right, fine.
I'm not sure if I'm ready. Calder told me to be scared of his questions.
Oh, yeah, he asked me
He
if he should be
apologized.
mean, and I said, yeah, sure. I don't have to answer them.
Yes,
Yep.
but if I end up crying, I'm gonna find him and cry in front of him too, and that's gonna be his punishment.
You don't have to answer them, Nick, but you also don't have to ask them.
No, I'm asking.
Okay.
Yeah.
Alright, well, let's get started, and we'll cross that bridge when we get to it.
We'll burn that bridge when we get to it.
That's right. Welcome to the latest Watercolors Aquarium Gallery podcast, brought to you from the Aquarium Rush Studios in downtown Grand Rapids, Michigan. My name is Ben,
I'm Amy.
No, Charles.
and we have some special guests here today. We are doing the, as you can see on Facebook, the listener questions live broadcast. So we have Nick here as our guest commentator.
Hello, hello.
He's here to torture us tonight.
That's right. Before any of that happens, though,
We have to do our shameless plug. Please head over to watercolorsaquariumgallery.com to buy some live plants, buy some merch designed by us, or just some supplies for your aquarium. Let us know if there's anything you're looking for. We've got a lot of stuff out there right now.
the plants are looking awesome.
Yeah, we've got a lot of plants right now.
Yeah.
Also, be sure to check out our Watercolors Aquarium Gallery podcast listeners group on Facebook. That's where you're going to get a lot of those notifications for events like this. So if you missed it and you're listening to this in the future, then don't miss it next time.
Good lord.
That's right, we're going full judgment now.
That's right. If you're listening to this in the future, it was a lot of fun.
Should have been here. And we're probably going to be answering some questions at the end, which may or may not make it into the official episode. So.
That's true. We kind of do that rapid fire thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the way this one works is we, as you all know, asked for a whole bunch of questions here. And Amy, Charles, and I have not had any kind of a preview as to what any of those questions are. So we have no idea what to expect. Nick has been informed to sort of sift through them, but not like really filter. Just, let's see what kind of crazy stuff is out there.
Yeah, the fun part is I didn't even look at half of them, so we're all going blind.
All right. And just so y'all know, you can probably see that I can see Nick's computer screen.
But not
I can't read that at all. So there's no risk of me previewing any of these questions.
I was just about to say, I can see it, but then I was like, oh, I'm nearsighted in my right eye. If I take my glasses off, I can't read it either.
A slight aside on this stream, if anyone's listening, somebody did make a comment about the audio earlier, so let us know if you can hear us when you can hear us. You got it? Okay, cool.
Cool. Are we ready to
What do you
jump
think,
into
Nick?
it?
Yeah, let's just jump in and let's see how it goes.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to start with submitted questions. We
Okay.
did get some questions from our own staff. We'll save those for the end because ours are the best.
Yeah, I might need to finish this beer before getting into the staff ones.
Cool. Cool. And also thank you to everybody who submitted questions. We got a bunch, especially kind of in a crunch in the last few days. So thank you for submitting some.
That's fun.
Awesome. Cool. This first one comes from Nelson.
Sorry, all I can see on your screen is big letters, not for Charles.
Perfect.
So don't chime in on this one.
I think he's not supposed to look at it.
No, you can't participate.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
This guy says, I have a question inspired by a recent trip I took to the big box stores. Said I'm no longer a beginner, so I was kind of shaking my head at all the fish they had for sale that should not be accessible to people. I was thinking about most of the sharks, but it got me thinking, I don't even know how to properly take care of sharks. So I guess we're gonna assume these are freshwater sharks, yeah?
Yeah, I think that's probably the first thing to address in that question is what you were looking at. Let's say I'm 99% sure weren't sharks.
Yeah, agreed.
I'd
So,
go with 100.
Like,
You
maybe
go.
there's a weird Petco somewhere that has one? I don't know. They have salt water at least.
Yeah, I think I'm going with 100.
You go with 100? Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe 100.
Yeah. So the sharks would probably be one of our nemesis fish, the iridescent shark. How do you take care of that one? You don't. I mean, okay, no,
You
we don't-
can't.
we have to address
You
it in a
can't.
better way.
Yeah.
That's something to answer the question, right? Olympic-sized swimming pool, maybe half Olympic-sized swimming pool.
Yeah,
Yeah. So
lots of flow.
lots of
Yeah,
flow.
it's got one of those like cool things like for people who don't have room for like a lap pool, but it's more like a treadmill.
Oh, like in a swimming
Yeah.
pool.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that would work.
the actual question here was, you're already kind of touching on it, but he said, how would you care for these species?
Yeah.
If there is a way, yeah.
Yeah, so, and I'm only sort of kidding when I say half-size Olympic-sized swimming pool, like thousands of gallons, not even like 1,000-gallon tank, like thousands of gallons. This is a fish that is a true schooling fish that lives in the Mekong River
One of the largest rivers in the world, by the way.
Yes, and can get 3 or 4 feet long. So you want an aquarium or a pool big enough to house, we'll go with 6 4-foot fish that are extremely active.
Yeah, I remember pretty recently we got 2 pairs of the iridescent sharks in as rescues at once. And I think one of the pairs, they were maybe 4 inches long at the most in a 40-gallon, like 3-foot tank. And they stressed themselves to death.
Yeah,
They rubbed their
Eventually.
faces raw.
Yeah.
they're such cool looking fish. I remember wanting them when I was a kid, when I didn't know any better. And there wasn't a book out there to tell me how big they got. I think actually one of the books says they get 30 centimeters, which is a foot, which is dramatically below what their actual potential size is.
Right.
Yeah. So the other sharks, we should.
Bala sharks is
Yep.
going to be the next one I want to talk about. Actually a big barb, but what's really funny about them is that they get like 10 inches long and they don't, like their body doesn't bend, so you need a tank that's like 18 inches wide so that they can turn.
Yeah.
That's going to be the big thing.
I think a 180.
Yeah,
You can
To
get
really
away
do
with
them
it.
justice, yeah, you would probably need bigger, I feel like. This is one of those fish that I've always wanted to see kept wild. Because it would look so cool.
Right.
But I've never seen it.
No. They just get huge.
they just big.
Yeah.
And I think most of the rest ones are like decent aquarium fish, right?
Other than the Colombian high-fin
Oh,
bull shark,
I always forget about that one. Yeah, forget
Yeah.
about that one.
which is a 14-inch semi-marine catfish.
Yeah.
But then rainbow sharks and red-tail sharks those are great. Both
Mhm.
also barb species. Or cyprinids, I guess not necessarily barb, but cyprinids.
Yeah, I actually am a big fan of the red-tailed sharks.
Me too.
They're kind of pushy, but there's just something about them. They're very outgoing. I feel like if you set up the right tank for it, like a 30 breeder is
Yeah.
viable.
Really, it's more about the other fish you're keeping with it at
Yeah.
that point to me. Like, tiny fish, no, but regular sized fish, sure.
But I do want to talk about the red-tailed sharks real quick too. They're one of the like shining lights in the hobby where like that's a fish that's extinct in the wild. It only exists because people keep it in tanks. And so like I think it's important to not lose sight of the fact that this is a hobby that can do great things. It's just not there yet. We need to just broaden our horizons and hold each other accountable better, and I think we can get there.
Absolutely.
Yep, well said.
Cool, is that all the sharks?
That's all the ones I can think of.
Yeah.
Common.
Yeah.
Common, common.
Yeah, the rainbows, which are like, they're red tail, they're cooler. I don't know.
Rainbows
No,
are
they're
just a
fine.
little bit bigger red-tailed sharks.
Yeah.
With the color's not as dark, but they do have more red on the fins.
Yeah,
They do have more sass too.
You think so?
That's been my experience
Okay.
anyways.
I feel like a red tail is kind of like a small clown loach. That's kind of how they act, but not as derpy.
Yeah.
Right.
Cool, moving on.
Yeah.
Next question is from Stuart M. This is kind of a topic we've touched on, but we'll go over it again. He has a 36-gallon bow front, and he wants kind of a step-by-step on how to convert it to a saltwater tank, given the kind of the equipment that he has already. So, hang on the back, small sponge filters, and a fluid heater. What does he need new to kind of transition over, and what can he keep?
Aragonite, sand, salt water.
Rocks.
Rocks.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like all that is equipment that I would use in a tank that size.
for sure.
Just
Cool.
drain it, pop the sand in, pop the rocks in, fill with salt water.
Yeah.
I like hang on the back filters for saltwater tanks.
Yeah.
Especially with the oxygenation. I'd probably recommend getting a flow pump, just because
Yeah,
things are
good
easier
catch,
with
yeah.
one. But, you're doing a pair of clownfish in there, you don't need it.
And then
Yeah,
the lights.
With 2 sponge filters in there for
Right.
oxygenation.
I'd still love to see one of those
Yeah.
CJ flow pumps in there.
Definitely the right choice.
And then lights are gonna be very dependent on what you wanna keep. You could stick with the lights that you currently have if you're just gonna do a fish only system.
Or like if you are keeping plant aquarium, you could do macroalgae.
Yeah,
Yes.
Just saying.
If you do just keep the lights you have and you're not planning on growing anything, keep the photo period really low. Like just when you're home, just when you're looking at it, even if that's 3 hours. Otherwise you're probably gonna get some algae issues.
Easy enough.
Yeah, people really overthink the making the jump to saltwater thing.
the decor switch is the decor and then move the water.
Yeah.
And then trying to answer the question about lights is really a matter of
What do you want?
what do you wanna keep. Although I guess it's the same with freshwater.
Sure.
Yeah, a tank's almost just a tank, you just gotta have the right materials, I guess. Right, starting with the same footprint.
Cool. Next question is from Matthew S. He says sometimes when his return pump sits a little funny, it vibrates. He said he doesn't notice it terribly, but it got him thinking, what does it sound like to fish? Is that something we overlook in the hobby? How do fish hear, and are these sounds like abrasive to them?
Ooh, interesting.
Yeah, this is a question I think about a lot because fish are actually very sensitive to vibration, and especially low frequency sounds, which a lot of these pumps and stuff do produce in these sound ranges. I think when it comes to freshwater fish, they probably don't care that much, especially fish that come from flowing streams, because these are environments where there would be a lot of like white noise as like silt and sand and rocks are being moved around and like all that good stuff. And then I'm a little more concerned with reef fishes because unless the water is just really ripping through, these are environments that tend to be, as far as wild habitats tend to be pretty quiet.
Oh no, that is not my experience.
Let me finish.
Okay.
I said in relation to habitats. They tend to be fairly quiet, and a lot of that means that most of the noise in those environments are biological. And so there's actually becoming an increasing trend in science, and we're figuring out how much fish communicate with each other. And we're figuring out as we're spending more time in these areas, we're actually inhibiting their ability to communicate with each other because they're less able to, they're not good at yelling over non-biological sounds.
Okay. Yep. As you get shallower on a reef, the amount of sound from pistol shrimp
Mm-hmm.
is insane. I mean, it sounds like somebody's popping popcorn.
Oh yeah, but it's all biological.
Yeah, that makes sense. Right. As
Yeah.
opposed to the constant hum of a motor.
Well, and like a reef is a lot like a terrestrial jungle, essentially. Those noises mean things to them. If everybody goes silent, that's pretty darn important.
True.
So it does have an effect there. Honestly, I think in aquariums they probably mostly adjust. They're communicating more visually than vocally, and if anything, it's just probably a constant annoyance. But in the wild, it's definitely a big deal.
Yeah.
I would say probably a simple answer to the question is, are they aware of it? Probably. Is it having a long-term negative effect? Probably not.
Good question.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can live next to the highway and tune it out eventually.
True.
But we know so little about how fish communicate. Hard to say,
Yeah.
definitively, yeah.
But sounds are a decent part of it. That's definitely known.
Cool. Next question is from Galen P. He said he's fallen in love with the way vampire shrimp and bamboo shrimp behave. After doing some research, it looks like floating plants and slower swimming fish can be drowned or exhausted in a tank of high flow required for these kind of animals. How would you say someone would set up a high flow tank aiming to recreate an environment like a tropical stream?
I think there's tons of fish that can do just fine in a high flow stream. Many of the danios.
Especially a hill stream danio.
Yeah, right. The longer the skinnier the fish, not that's too broad of a statement. The longer the skinny the tetra or cyprinid, that might be too broad too.
No, I think that's as good as generally
Yeah,
you're gonna
okay. They're going to be more attuned to higher flow areas. And then hill stream loaches, any of the real flat plecos are going to be just fine in an environment like that.
Hill stream loaches.
Yeah. I think a bigger question there is addressing the needs of bamboo shrimp. And they're tricky. The feeding needs of bamboo shrimp are pretty extreme. They are filter feeders. And oftentimes you'll see and even sometimes read about people that say, oh yeah, no, I got my bamboo shrimp and he stopped filter feeding and now he forages. Well, that is a desperate move from a starving animal that's not going to find enough to eat. So you do have to find a way to properly provide filter feeding organism sized food particles for filter feeding organisms. And those, as they're doing their really cool hand thing up in the air, That's to catch particles of food, and they do that constantly.
Yeah, I feel pretty comfortable making a pretty broad, hard statement here, but I do personally think filter feeders are the hardest things to feed properly in aquariums.
I mean, they are the equivalent of a non-photosynthetic coral.
Yeah,
It's that same type of challenge
That's
where it's a constant food requirement, but also they have a constant cleanliness requirement. They need a highly oxygenated tank, so you're working with two things that have vastly different consequences.
Right.
But we have a listener who feeds hers powdered foods, and she seems to be doing fine with them for at least, I think she said a couple of years,
I think
where
she
they're
said
not
two.
scavenging
I
and,
would put that as successful.
yeah,
because
Yeah.
isn't their life expectancy like 6 years? Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
like that's not the full lifespan, but
It's at least proof they're not starving.
Yeah.
It is better than most people get with them, so.
Yeah, so.
I think you're gonna need some pretty good plant growth to make up for the excess nutrients because you're gonna be needing to feed heavily. And some pretty substantial mechanical filtration that will need to be cleaned on a pretty regular basis. And powdered foods.
I think this is the type of, people don't think about refugiums in freshwater systems.
Yeah.
This
That's
is
pretty cool.
the kind of thing where like, you do 2 tanks, one's the high flow, like crazy high oxygen environment, and then the other tank doesn't need to just be a refugium, it can be a planet display.
Yeah.
Mhm.
There you go, 2 tanks in one.
Yeah, you got a swamp tank and you got a stream tank.
Exactly.
The only other advice that I would give on getting something like a bamboo shrimp is, and I don't say this lightly, order one from a local fish store and get it within a day or two of it coming in.
Yeah,
Because they may or may not know how to properly feed that organism. And the sooner you can get it into an environment where it's gonna be fed properly, the better.
yeah, I'm also gonna comment on, like, inverts kind of scrub a lot of the QT rules, specifically shrimp, because anything, like, any parasite they could get, in order to treat that properly, you're gonna kill the shrimp to do it.
Right.
Like, unfortunately, you just kind of have to bite the bullet with that.
And they're not gonna carry something that's gonna transfer to your fish.
Yeah.
On the off chance they come out of a tank where the fish just dropped the ick parasite into the cyst stage, and when landed on the shrimp, while it was being netted and brought, but most likely you're not gonna get a fish parasite transferred to a shrimp.
Yeah.
Cool question.
Yeah, as far as setup, I'm picturing something maybe over-filtered a little bit with the canister,
Yeah,
really high output.
with one canister, the input on one end and the output on the other end, so you're getting a little bit of that stream, a little bit of that turbulent water.
There are cool ways to do like a continuous stream flow, but you don't need to.
They're complex too.
Yeah, it's cool, but it's not easy.
Cool. Here's a question from Sam P. I've been listening to your podcast. I was wondering if I could ask some questions about setting up a tank around 2 fish in particular, being Bosemani rainbows and peacock gudgeons. Do you think this would be a good combo? Do you have any suggestions on tank size, group size, and kind of layout and aquascaping ideas? These are 2 fish that he intends to breed eventually, but he just really likes these fish and wants to house them together.
I think they would go just fine together.
I think that'd be an awesome combination.
Yeah. I think this is, you said Sam Peterson? I think
Pat.
that's
Patterson.
Patterson. Okay. I think this is someone who's active on our Facebook page.
He actually thanked you for your talk at the March MAS meeting, so you may have met him.
Cool,
Okay.
fine.
That might be why the name's landing. Yeah, I'm gonna say off the bat, Bosemani rainbows. How many of them? As many as you can get.
Yeah, because they look really cool together.
They look so cool in a group.
Yeah, 7 I would say is where you should target 7.
Yeah.
You can get away with a trio with Bosemani rainbows, but that's
It's like saying, oh, I can get away with keeping a 1.5 gallon bullets for fun.
right,
Yeah.
exactly.
I would do 75, I think.
Yeah, at
Yeah.
I
least.
think you would want the 4 feet at least.
Mhm.
It might even be a good candidate for a 55, even though I know none of us really like that size.
I was gonna say 40 long just because I don't like 55s, but
Just can't handle those
I
extra
just can't
3
handle
inches on the top.
it. 7 Bosemani rainbows. If you go into the 75, I think you could go up to 12 or 15 Bosemani rainbows.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably the same on the gudgeons too.
Yeah, do a pile of those, and try to get more females than males. The males are the ones who guard the eggs. They're actually one of the easiest of the goby-like fish to breed. I know that because I successfully bred them, so you know they couldn't be that difficult.
Yeah.
And a group of those they're a cave spawner. So you want, I used these really cool ceramic caves that are like, I don't know, 3-4 inches long and maybe a half or 3/4 inside dimension. And they did great. And the male will have the spot and he'll keep the spot and you'll know he's got some eggs he's defending because he won't come off for a while. And he'll kind of look at you with that scowling face saying, shut up. And that's when you know. Sexing those guys, I don't remember which is which, but one of them has a black edge right at the base of the anal fin, and the other one doesn't. So if you see some with a black edge and some with not, there you go. You know you got your male and female ratio. The males, when those things mature, they get that really big, almost a frontosa like knuckle hump on them. Super cool fish, great combination. Aquascaping, I would say you could go nuts with an aquascape like that. You want to make sure there's plenty of swimming room, but big tall plants for the rainbows to swim through would be fine.
Hey, do we have any of that, the Australian valve?
Yeah,
They
that would be
They
perfect.
would look cool swimming through that.
Would.
They would look great. Speckly valves. You could fill that thing with plants.
Yeah.
It would be kind of fun to try and make like a little peacock gudgeon colony with like a pile of rubble or something like that. See if you can make
Yeah.
enough crevices that they'll kind of, almost like a cichlid pile. Like
Yeah, I
a
was about
pile.
to say, I bet a lot of the Gelidochroma strats would work well with peacock gudgeons.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Cool fish.
From a display point of view, they kind of occupy different levels in the tank,
Yeah.
so they would fill the space out really well.
Their colors would accent each other really nicely too.
I agree. Cool.
Here are a few questions from Caleb J. He is asking for clarification on mandarins and dragonettes. Are they different? What are the different species? And are they fit for a nano tank? Also, how do you care for them? Is it feasible to keep them with copepods? These are questions that we have touched on before, but they're kind of heartbreakers.
So dragonette is the general name for those fish in that group. And I guess you could say the technical name for a mandarin fish is a mandarin dragonette, or a green spotted dragonette, or a red scooter dragonette. So all of those fish that have that shape are dragonettes. Syncharopus and Pterosyncharopus are the two main genera. There's one other, the scooters are a different genera, but all in that little group of fish that would be called dragonettes. Copepods are a great combination because dragonettes need to eat a lot.
You're going to be culturing the ever-living Jesus out of them, though, to keep up with them.
Yeah, like if you have a large refugium on a large system, that would maybe be the best way to keep up with it.
I mean, honestly, I have seen at least 4 220 gallon plus systems where a single dragonette within 6 months managed to decimate the amphipod and copepod populations.
But yeah, not with the dragonette in the
Yeah.
display. Like if you take a little bit at a time and ration them out.
Yeah,
into separate
I'm
tanks.
just trying to contextualize to people that they're like, well, I do a big tank, and I'm like,
Yeah,
that's not,
it's not enough.
it's not enough. These are hyper predators. Imagine hummingbird, but it eats bugs.
Very, very, very small bugs.
Yeah.
If she's not target fed, the dragonette and her 220 gallon understocked, well, pretty severely understocked, honestly, especially when she was skinny, she eats them all.
Yeah.
Twice now. We
Yeah.
let the population bounce back, reintroduced her, and the same thing happened again.
Yeah, so you'll see her getting thin, and luckily, you know, when she gets desperate, she'll eat some mysis, and we've been able to keep her going. But I think she's been removed from that tank now. It was just too much work.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
have
she's
to,
downstairs again.
she's in the 1,200 gallon invert system.
Right.
Where we grow macroalgae.
Yes.
Yeah.
So if you haven't noticed, you've hit a bit of a touchy subject when it comes to dragonets. We've talked about doing an episode, top 5 fish that break our hearts.
Maybe we
And-
should just do a dragonets episode at
We
this
should.
point.
Yeah, we should. Let's do a dragonet episode.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that would be a good one.
But some highlights from the up and coming dragonet episode would be getting healthy ones may or may not be worth it.
May or may not be possible.
Yeah.
It's hard for me to call the fry you can get from captive breeders healthy.
And
Yes,
talk
they
about what
are.
they collected too.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, they live in the rockwork, so in order to catch them, you have to use, and I'm not exaggerating, they're tiny harpoon guns. And so like their survival rate from capture to retail is 1 in 8 because they're stupid prone to infections because that's an open wound and they're being transferred to the other side of the world. Like that's not an ideal situation. Like we've been through a global pandemic, guys, like we should understand that's not the ideal situation there. And once from the people I've seen who take them from retail, like if you're a god at it, your success rate is 25%.
Yeah, I think ours was in the 20 to 30% range when we were getting them in a couple at a time and hand training them.
Yeah, like, so for me, contextually, if you're working with a wild mandarin, if you succeed on your first try, you need to be okay with the fact that 11 other mandarins died in order for you to succeed. Period.
All right, so let's switch that over to tank raised dragonets. When we got them in, they came in 3/4 of an inch to an inch long. If you're a parent, you know how often you need to feed a newborn, right? That's how you need to look at feeding a new and incoming 3/4 of an inch long dragonet. 5, 6, 7, 8 times a day, that fish is going to need to eat.
Do you want to go on vacation for one day? Too bad.
Too bad, you can't.
Well, and that's on top of, in this case, it's not just a newborn. It's a newborn who has a weak immune system, who's been in systems with, or who's been around other possibly sick newborns. You've got to figure out which problems it has and solve them while trying to feed it that much. And, you know, we trust our captive breeders, but on the other hand, you can't single anyone out and say, oh, I trust that all of your fish are going to be healthy, but I'm going to quarantine the rest of them. So
Right.
if you're an individual, you can't put that fish directly into your display tank. Not even just because of disease, but because it needs to be babied for months before you do that.
So around here, we consider an acceptable loss at less than 10%, right? And if we have fish that we're bringing in and losing more than 10% of those fish, we have to either come up with okay, we figured out why we're losing them, and this is what we're doing to correct that problem, to try and get that back into the less than 10% loss level. We did that with dragonets for a while. Attempted to do that with dragonets for a while, and we were at a 70 to 75 or maybe 80% loss, and that's not acceptable loss. We are in the process of, once again, thinking about trying to maybe possibly put together a mandarin conditioning system to try and provide regularly healthy dragonets.
How many caveats can you put on a single
That's
sentence?
exactly what I try to do, right? Just to try to really get the point across that we're not willing to kill a bunch of dragonets so that we can sell a couple of healthy ones. Right?
Honestly, it wouldn't make us money. Like, the reason that dragonets are still everywhere is because they look good in tanks and people want them. But if you're, like, okay, typical markup for fish is like 3x, right? If our success rate is 30%, when would we be making money? Why? What's the point of that?
Right.
So,
The demand is huge, though.
yeah, it's huge, but I'm not gonna kill a fish just so I can say I sold you one.
Exactly.
Here's another touchy question from Caleb.
Okay.
More or less the same questions, but regarding seahorses and pipefish.
I would say it's almost less dismal for seahorses and pipefish, only because you can't get wild-caught seahorses anymore. They're illegal to import into the United States.
Yeah.
You can only get farm-raised ones. Farm-raised seahorses, if they're eating, are extremely hardy.
You just have to feed
A lot.
a lot.
All the time.
A seahorse and pipefish tank is a much better alternative to dragonets.
Oh, easily.
But is it worth it?
Seahorses and pipefish have an extremely inefficient metabolism. What that means is they need to eat a whole lot of food in order to get the in order to meet their metabolic needs. They have almost zero fat reserves, so they don't store it. They just have to eat constantly. So as a fish keeper with those kinds of fish, you have to feed them 4 or 5 times a day. And Nick's comment about, oh, that's easy, I can do that, I work from home. Want to go away for a weekend? Want to go on vacation? Sorry, you can't, your seahorses are going to die.
How do you need a full-time house sitter that's gonna overfeed them?
Right. Okay, so backing it up realistically, how to keep seahorses and pipefish. Appropriate size tank to the size seahorses or pipefish you're going to keep, which they don't have to be that big.
They don't move that well.
Right. Over filter it because you're going to need to feed a lot, and put scavengers in there. Don't put any fish in the tank that are going to compete with your feeding seahorses and pipefish. What that means is nothing. Well, okay, maybe dragonettes if you can pull off dragonettes, but we addressed that.
Some of those fun little gobies, maybe clown gobies or green
Or
bands or
extremas.
something.
Yeah, I could see that as a
I
possibility.
think that'd be kind of cute.
Yeah. It's just got to be designed around the seahorses or pipefish.
It's a seahorse tank,
Right.
period.
No clownfish.
No stinging corals, soft corals.
Gorgonians are fine.
Gorgonians are awesome.
Okay, so maybe we have to do a seahorse and pipefish episode as well.
I think that would be a fun one too.
What if we just did like a crazy feeders episode?
Yeah.
Yep, slow feeders. Yeah.
This next question from Caleb, I think is my favorite so far.
Oh, cool.
What are some cool symbiotic relationships we can keep in tanks?
Coral.
Coral itself is Yeah.
A coral have a symbiotic relationship with zooxanthellae, which are a type of dinoflagellate that live within their tissues. Corals themselves are not photosynthetic, their symbiotes are.
Okay.
The goby and pistol shrimp is almost always going to be the most fun example for me.
Any niche examples you can think of?
Pom-pom crabs.
Ooh.
Yeah. Pom-pom crabs are, so they are tricky to feed because you have to not only feed the crab, you also have to feed the pom-poms. And the pom-poms are these symbiotic anemones that live on the claws of the crab. Those have to be targeted. So you have to have a pretty decent working relationship with your crab, so the crab is willing to come out and say, here, feed my anemones, right? For those of you just listening right now, I'm putting my hands in the air and waving them back and forth.
Like he just doesn't care.
Right.
Hey-o.
I've never heard of those. Those are sweet.
They're really
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, they're fun.
They are a tricky one, they are a niche one. Set up a little 2.5-gallon tank with a little mini sponge filter or a minion, just for your pom-pom crab, making your little buddy.
We've gotten them a couple times, and I don't think either time both pom-poms made it with them. Like, because the shipment process is so stressful that they're like later.
Attached.
Yeah. So like, get one from a store that already has
Right.
them very well established.
Yep.
One example I could think of that actually Charles, I believe, taught me was moray eels and certain groupers. Isn't that true?
Yeah.
Yeah. They're, so moray eels and groupers hunt very differently. So like if they team up and are buddies, they can actually benefit from each other because the eel will root around and stuff, and every once in a while something will shoot out and the grouper can get it. But the grouper's hovering above, so stuff doesn't want to come out.
Right.
So both of them hunt better.
Mm-hmm.
What was really intriguing to me was like I didn't really, and it came up because I didn't really fathom how generalized that instinct is, because we had a snowflake moray and a V-tail grouper, and they like buddied up for a while. Like they would hang out in the same burrow. It blew my mind how often I would look in the tank, and the moray eel would be sticking his head out, and the grouper's head would be right above him
Mm-hmm.
in the burrow.
Right.
And like the longer they lived together, the more the V-tailed grouper's name is Vinny. The more Vinny behaved like the eel.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, what the heck? I've never seen a grouper behave like, a lot of people interpret it as skittish, but the more I watch them, the more I'm like, no, he just thinks he's an eel now.
As of now, we still have both of these individuals too. If you were to come by the shop, you could see them.
Yeah, and they've definitely gotten tighter. Those aren't even either of the species that this has been documented in,
Yeah.
by the way.
Right.
Like, yeah, but I don't think, like, it's just something that they do. I don't know that it's necessarily this like pure instinct that they have.
Yeah,
They just
so that's the
realize.
quotation.
Yeah, they just realize that it works, and they're both pretty smart fish. And they
Did we
figure it
just
out.
become best friends?
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. Before we move on, do we have any freshwater examples of symbiosis that you could do in an aquarium? I can't think of any.
There's one that's a really cool symbiosis, but I don't know that you could pull it off in an aquarium.
Well, I want to learn about it anyways.
All right, so in Lake Nicaragua,
I knew it.
You knew I was going there. Perchromis dovii, the wolf cichlid, has a symbiotic relationship with Nicaraguensis. It's a genus for Nicaragua, I don't remember what it is, but the Nicaraguan cichlid, where the Nicaraguan cichlid will babysit for the wolf cichlid, specifically to go feed on, I believe it's Neotropolis, which is another cichlid found in Lake Nicaragua that is a specialized nest raider and specialized in feeding specifically, like one of their favorite foods is young Nicaraguensis. They would never think of taking out a wolf cichlid because wolf cichlid is
Terrifying?
terrifying. Yeah, I would go so far as to say maybe the most aggressive cichlid. Yeah, I'm gonna say that. Like
Hard to
I've heard-
argue with.
Yeah, I've heard of them breaking through glass aquariums. Right, these guys are ferocious beasts, and normally would feed on something the size of a Nicaraguensis. Hang on, we have to pause for just a moment because people are begging Allie to go get us another round of
Yes.
beers.
We'll get you here.
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Yeah.
What do you guys want?
Whatever's down there.
Just bring 3 or
Okay.
4 beers up.
Thank you, Ellie.
Thanks, Allie.
I'm gonna pop in. I saw the word beta on Nick's screen. I'm
Yeah,
gonna address this question.
So I'm gonna you have to let me finish my description.
Oh, sorry.
Tell the story.
I thought
You
you
got
did.
distracted.
I got completely distracted by the.
Okay.
I
We will get to that one
I
though.
interrupted. Make a hard stop right here so I can edit around that.
So the Nicaraguensis knows how to present itself properly to a wolf cichlid parent to say to the wolf cichlid, hey, I'll watch your kids for you if you want to go out on a hunt. And it will actually stay and quote unquote babysit the wolf cichlid babies so the wolf cichlid can go hunt.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Calder was telling me of a similar one with, I think, chubs and shiners.
Yeah.
Chubs and other
Oh, yeah.
cyprinids.
I think it's horny head chubs
Yeah,
and shiners.
where they'll build a big rocky nest like a hotel for all the other cyprinids to come and raise their fry there too.
And the way he described it to me, where they kind of congregate in such a group, where if a predator were to come by, the shiners are much easier of a grab than the chubs are, so they have an advantage to allow this big gang of shiners to hang around there.
That's awesome.
That's cool.
We should do a native fish episode.
Native fish.
No, thanks.
Calder's gonna be waiting in the parking lot. I do like to recommend whenever anybody's interested in symbiosis, Neolampologus species are a blast if you're interested in that. It's not the same because it's intra-species, not interspecies, but they'll help out raise each other's fry and that kind of thing. It's really cool.
Charles, you want to touch on this
Sorry.
Yeah.
wild betta question here?
But the gist of the question is like, what wild betta do you recommend to someone who's not new to bettas but new to wild bettas? Anything but betta macrosoma. Like you're already overthinking it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, like wild bettas are so easy to work with. Like if you're really concerned about it, anything in the betta splendens complex, anything in the pneumatic complex,
Yep.
those are all stupid easy to take care of.
Yep.
But like overall, like even the traditional quote unquote hard ones, like the Casino complex bettas, they're pretty easy to keep. They're hard to breed, but they're easy to keep.
Yeah, if you're willing to work with black water too, like
Yeah.
I think that's the question to ask right there, right? Is what is your home water like? And do you want to mess with it?
Yeah.
We have relatively hard, higher pH water here. So Machiensis is a great choice. Ocelota we can do without messing with it. New Maculata we can do without messing with it. And a whole myriad of other ones. If we had more neutral water, you could go to some of the more neutral bettas. Or 50% RO, 50% tap water. If you have more acidic or soft water, by the way, not water softened by a softener, totally different thing,
Yes.
right? Then you could go to, like what Charles was saying, some of the blackwater species. Or maybe even think about Macrostoma, but that's a tricky one.
Yeah.
Lots of them are easy.
Lots of them are easy. Like if I had to throw one wild betta at someone, it's like, this will work for you, I guarantee it. A betta embellus.
Yeah.
Because embellus can be found naturally in the wild from anything from 5.5 to a brackish environment.
Right.
There's no way it won't do well in your tank.
So then I would say for a bubble nester, the quote-unquote easiest wild type would be embellus. What would you say is the easiest mouth-breathing betta? Immaculata?
Yeah.
To breed? I mean, the boring brown ones are gonna knock it out of
that's
the park
true.
every time.
That's true.
The
Enethe,
yeah.
Fulks,
Pugnax, yeah.
Enethe, we've got that group down there that aren't Enethe but are
Oh,
labeled
the
as such.
stigmosa.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's another fun thing about that is if you're getting into the mouth breeders, specifically anything in the Pugnax complex, you have to be able to read taxonomic keys. Because I promise you,
Right.
I have in the store at least 3 times in the last 2 years ordered something and definitely got something else.
And we have a very, very good meticulous wholesale.
Yeah.
You know what though? I think I have an answer to what's the best betta you should start with. Whatever is the cheapest bag of bettas at your local aquarium auction.
Yeah.
That's a pretty good point. I mean, that's a bigger statement than it sounds like at first, right?
Yeah.
Because if they're cheap, that means they're breeding them easy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it means everyone else already has them and they're breeding easy
Right,
too.
exactly. I love that.
But if you send us an email, with your water parameters, we can kind of recommend some
Oh, that's a
Yeah,
fun
for
idea.
based on your water.
Yeah. I like it.
Next, what's next?
We have some questions from Christopher A.
What about Christopher B?
This is, I guess they're kind of podcast recommendations, a couple of them, but
Okay.
it says,
Okay.
top 5 calmest, most soothing aquarium setup. I find too often when I watch people's tanks, there's territory debates and there's a hierarchy and there's always turmoil.
See, those are my favorite tanks.
Thanks for the people who think guppies are too aggressive.
Yeah, there we go.
What is a setup that's calm to watch?
I think
Is my
we could-
takeaway from that.
That would be a fun one.
That would be.
Easily Cory cats.
Like think about,
They're pretty hyper though.
They're hyper, but they don't seem to have a hierarchy.
True.
They
No
just
conflict.
That's true.
they
No
just
conflict.
chill.
Right.
like if you were to go on YouTube and look up like a 10-hour aquarium stream where it's just a tank with fish going back and forth, what fish gives you kind of that look?
Not so.
Archers are fun for that.
Oh,
Like
that's true.
those and like the butterfly fish. And you have like the surface drifters, like hatchetfish. That's a very calm,
Yeah.
peaceful looking tank. That would be a fun episode to do.
Yeah.
He said that his discus tank scared off a friend because they were staring at them.
Are you want fish that are gonna not just be boring but ignore you?
I like it. That was a good question.
Eat us.
Here's some questions from Glenn C. Oh, he says, I apologize if this is a downer of a question, but I would like to know your preferred methods for euthanizing or calling fish. We have recommended in a previous episode about kind of recycling your calls to a predatory fish.
That's my favorite method.
Yeah.
What kind of examples of predatory fish can you think of that can be kept, in a tank nearby that are manageable?
Pike cichlids.
I was gonna say it, so I'm glad you did.
Big
Yep.
mouth brooding bettas are another really good
Yeah.
option. I
Right.
love peppermint pikehead. That's the one I'm always gonna champion.
Those are.
I miss having big Unimaculata's in my home.
Mhm.
They solve so many problems.
The only problem that I have with peppermint pikehead as your culling fish is they are sometimes tricky to get off of live foods. And there's a risk of, if you feed them too many culls, they might go back to only doing them. So there's a little risk there. But
Hear me out.
If you're a
Otherwise,
guppy
champion-
breeder though.
I will hear me out. If you're really trying to breed, peppermint pikeheads, if you can keep up with that, you're doing pretty solid.
That's true.
That's true.
That,
They
like,
are such cool fish.
they're a cool fish.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I missed the ones we had.
Mhm.
I really took a liking to them.
Yeah, they were fun.
A
Anything with a
frogfish.
frogfish would be good. Anything with a big enough mouth,
Mhm.
right? That's big fish eat little fish. So
I've also done ice water baths and clove oil with some really big fish. You just gotta be brave and clove them sometimes.
yeah,
That's the most like humane way to do it. Honestly,
Yeah,
it's
it's
instant.
but clove oil is considered I think the veterinary standard for euthanizing fish.
Yeah. If you've done it right, they can be out in out in like 3 seconds.
Yeah, freezing is what works too. I've heard of a couple people who will try to do like an instant like freeze in like really ice cold water, so then they don't at least have to wait through it.
Yeah.
That's why I like predators.
Yeah, exactly.
Done.
It's just over, and then that energy goes to something, not just in the trash.
This individual actually quoted you saying that in the previous episode.
Yeah, well, I only say 10 things and then I mix them up.
That's it. Amy's not actually a person, it's just a soundbite board that we cobbled together to keep it going.
We've replaced Amy with AI.
Press a button and just plays what it's already
The
said.
generated response. Here's some questions from Skylar S. And they ask, what's a fish that you enjoy in someone else's tank, but you would never keep yourself?
Oh, that's a really good one.
I like that.
And then they kind of reframed it as, what have you kept in the past and enjoyed, but never want to touch again?
Discus.
I
Mm.
love
I do too. Absolutely, but I will never keep them again.
Big Central and South American cichlids are it for me. I think they're so cool. I have no desire to keep them.
it. Nor do I.
Yeah.
But I don't think they're cool.
There's
No,
some
There's some really cool
There
Central
are,
American
there are.
cichlids that, you know, I just,
Yeah, I'm just tired of the mixed groups that I'm burnt out from it.
For the Central and South Americans, I'm not quite as tired of it because there's less interbreeding that happens and there's less like actual killing each other and just some squabbling and some vying for territory.
Yeah.
As far as a group of fish that I will never keep again, it's Malawi cichlids. Like without question, no interest in keeping Malawi cichlids.
No.
And
But I don't
really
even
enjoy
admire
them.
those tanks anymore. Like,
Right.
they just never look good to me.
Yeah.
Um,
Some of the I've seen some of the really impressive guppy breeders that I think those are fantastic aquariums, but not something that I have any interest in.
Same.
Other than that, it's just anything more high energy than I can handle. You know, filter feeders, non-photosynthetics, like all those things that,
Yeah.
I really admire the people who want to do that.
Mhm.
I don't want to do that.
The other ones that I really admire that I wish I could do are the specialists. And I guess that's not necessarily like a tank or a fish, but like as a general, like someday I may have a fish room again. And I would love to be the wild type betta guy and just have a room full of wild type bettas. And if somebody would do that, that's cool. My
Yeah.
friend who used to be like a hardcore show quality betta splendid breeder, like that was specialist, that was really cool. There's a guy in the club who for a long time was the shell dweller guy, and he was the specialist in shell dwellers. And I have a really strong appreciation for somebody who's going to do that. I wish I could, I cannot.
It's hard to commit to one thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
There's so many fun things to keep.
yep.
Something I had fun keeping that I'm not sure I'd ever do again. I've been thinking a lot about Cory cats. I had a lot of fun with them, but like they just don't mesh with the kind of tanks I keep anymore, and I'm not sure I want to shift all my gears to make them happy.
It's pretty easy for Cory cats.
You know?
Teaser.
Yep.
Second question from Skylar. Lots of people talk about different things that influence sex ratios when breeding fish, such as pH, temperature, water chemistry. How much does science back this up?
100%.
I know it's species dependent for sure.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
So when you're talking fish, you're talking, let's just say teleos fish, which is bony fish. That's 35,000 species of fish.
Right.
Like there's only 3,000 species of mammal, and not all of them have Y chromosomes.
Right.
Like now times that by 10. Like fish just have had hundreds of million years to figure out all these different strategies. And so like sex determination, like a lot of people like to behave like it's this hardcore, hard, fast, like it's either on or it's off, and that's not how it works at all. Like, I actually had a really cool conversation, and I know it's not fish. I don't care, I'm talking about it.
Okay.
Y chromosomes are a weird thing, because almost all of those genes are in the rest of our genome. We don't need them, period. It's just a convenient package. That's why it's so tiny. And so, like, when you're thinking about sex determination in fish and in organisms in general, you have to think, they're often not like, this is what I need, this is just a convenient way of doing it.
Okay.
And so, like, for a fish that comes from an environment that, like, I can't think of a specific example, but let's say that, like, this pH means this. Okay, having a sex ratio in that pH is beneficial. You're going to spec into that. Like, one of...
Like, let's say something with heavy rains where the pH is going to swing from one way to the other.
Yeah, it's like, that's just nature at its finest, and it's really cool. Like, again, not another fish example, but like Komodo dragons have, it's a WZ sex determination system, which means that if you're homozygous, that means you're male. If you're heterozygous, that means you're female. That's the exact opposite of mammals.
Right.
It's true for birds too, by the way. That's a really cool strategy because Komodo dragons are also capable of parthenogenesis, which is like basically self-fertilization. So if a single female makes it to an island, she can start an entire population by herself.
That's
That's awesome.
So the sex determination thing, Charles alluded to it, but it does need to be pointed out. It is absolutely 100% backed by science. For those species that do,
Yeah.
right, there are temperature ranges for certain fish that will determine sex ratios. But that doesn't mean all fish go, you know, if it's warmer it'll all be males, if it's cooler it'll all be females. That's not all fish, it's just certain fish, certain species that have that.
Yeah, I actually had a fun discussion with Will Awkward, actually texted me today.
Oh, cool.
We had him on the podcast like 40 episodes ago. And we were talking about how, like, I seem to be unintentionally drawn to fish species that are very prone to pH sex determination.
Interesting.
So, like, bettas, Pallicochromis, like, those are all clades that sort of thing is documented in.
Xiphophorus too.
Xiphophorus too, there we go.
Yeah.
Fun fact, guys.
Charles just got a nice population of Xiphophorus nigrensis
Yeah,
with a collection location.
I'm
He's very excited.
enjoying them so much.
Got all excited about this big huge killifish that was happening and came home with livebearers.
Yep.
Yep.
I got distracted by a good scientist.
That's how it goes.
Oh, here's some questions from Kevin, friend of the store.
Aw.
I got it.
I got it.
What is something unexpected that you learned from the recent convention? That was the live bears and killifish conventions that our group just came back from.
That I'm apparently a library guy.
That was a good segue.
Yeah, like, there was a lot of really cool stuff there.
Yeah.
The talks there were absolutely insane. There was one talk I did not like. I'm not going to dwell on that one too much.
I will. You go.
I'll let you deal with
Yeah.
that. But there were some, like, we had the head scientist of a fish farm there, and he was talking about the process of selective breeding. And his talk was just absolutely amazing to me. I think a lot of hobbyists could benefit from that sort of perspective. Specifically, I loved that he talked about how, like, inbreeding depression is not something he believes in. And then he basically unintentionally explained every way that he makes sure it doesn't happen. I'm just like, oh, you're just that good at making sure it doesn't happen, period, even though you're inbreeding everything. That guy was absolutely cool. And then there was the Caribbean pupfish talk.
Oh yeah.
That was probably the coolest talk, where it was about adaptive radiation in fishes, and they had the ingenious solution of, like, well, what if we just go to these simple habitats, quote unquote, with few trophic levels, just so that we can remove variables. And I'm like, that's genius. Like, try to condense an entire ecosystem down to like 5 fish. That's amazing. And then I think it was Molly Cummings, her talk on the Xiphophorus nigrensis, that was what convinced me to fit on these fish. It was about sexual conflict and how it influences cognitive abilities in fish. And I was just like, what a crazy idea for a study. I loved it.
I like it that how you made sure you said in fish.
Yeah.
What about you, Amy?
Well, I did learn, I'm trying to figure out how to phrase this exactly, because I do want to talk about that one talk you're mentioning, which is about conservation, but what I really took away from that one, you know, what the talk was actually about aside, is that the general opinion there swung a little closer to ours than it did to what I thought was conventional, where, you know, there are hobbyists out there that are wanting to take responsibility, and I think that's really cool.
Ben, are you gonna open that can of worms?
I'm actually going to open it a little bit carefully because my main issue with, and I got to preface this with, I only made it to 2 talks, right? And the last talk was the rice fish talk, and I didn't know rice fish could go down that cold, which I thought was really cool. And then I heard the first talk. I don't mind someone who has a differing opinion. In fact, often I appreciate it. But if the way you are going to try and push your different opinion on me is by argumentative tactics instead of actual facts or presenting the side, I don't have time for you, and in fact, I'm quite offended by you getting a stage.
What was the topic?
Remember our Lacey Act podcast? Imagine that article was a dude.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was basically, like, he was trying to discuss conservation issues in the aquarium hobby, but it was mainly from the perspective of, they're gonna take our fish, we need to figure out how to prevent that.
They're gonna take our fish.
Yeah.
right.
So, if you're starting from that perspective and not starting from the perspective of, hey, how do we work towards a better future for everybody, then you've already lost me.
Yeah, and I feel the need, I need to call out the specific aspect of, I need to contextualize to the listeners that, like, this dude spent 20 minutes of his talk just talking about, like, here's the corruption and the cops that are enforcing this.
Yeah.
That's completely not relevant to this issue.
Bank robbery should be legal because there was this cop in this small town that had an affair with somebody.
Yeah.
So bank robbery should be legal.
Yeah, plus, that bank wasn't that important anyway.
Right, exactly.
I think Ben leaned over to me at one point and said, this sounds a lot like a little column A, a little column 17.
Yeah, but anyway, but I did learn, like, that there was a good response from the community at large.
That was very encouraging afterwards. There were a lot of people that didn't necessarily appreciate it.
I do feel the need to.
What do you think of that, Kevin?
I do feel the need to, like, I guess maybe congratulate Kevin because that, if all else, that speaker did actually get me to yell at someone at the convention.
That's true.
And
Yeah.
that was, like, shocking to me myself and many people at the table.
I want to congratulate Kevin because he won an award at that convention.
He did, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which was awesome.
Overall,
He and his wife.
he as well. She won a bunch.
Did she?
She did.
Tell me about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Overall, that convention was amazing. We had a blast and we all learned a ton.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Good caveat.
And I would go to the whole thing again, even if I had to listen to that guy.
Everything after that was amazing.
It was.
The talk after that was the pupfish talk.
Yeah,
That was awesome.
exactly.
It was pretty funny, and we've been dwelling on this for a little while, but that's
I
okay.
know, we dwelt on it in the last episode.
We did, it's true. I was sitting,
We'll do it again.
yeah,
I'm sure.
I went right back to our booth after the first talk, and then Charles and Calder came walking in,
Storming it.
storming in, thank you, looking like, I thought they'd play dun 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 dun, like they were, I wouldn't have been surprised if they left, right? After and this was before the whole discussion, right? And then, we gotta go to the next talk. And they left, the next talk happened, and it was basically the equivalent of, first there were bluebirds that flew in, and then Charles and Calder, holding hands, skipped into the room, all happily frolicking. This was so fun! Yeah, it was great.
I hate to say it, but he's not that far off. That's
No.
like pretty
It
accurate.
was awesome.
Must have been a good talk.
Yeah,
It doesn't take much to turn them around for that group.
No.
it was great.
Here's another question from Kevin. And he says, this may not be fit for the podcast, but
Ooh.
he asks, how do you vet a wholesaler without giving away trade secrets?
Ooh.
That's a good question.
Is it by price, supply, relationships?
So if we're talking about, let's start with, say, a freshwater wholesaler. The very first thing I'm going to do is look for some of those big red flags. If they have a whole bunch of specials on clown knives and iridescent sharks and paku, I'm not gonna order from them. If they have tattooed fish, although that's been really rare, that used to be a thing, like you'd regularly see that. If a wholesaler sent me a list and tattooed fish were on the list, I would probably send them some kind of an email, and then block any further communication on that. That's my first step.
Yeah, we should say, because I think people probably don't have this behind the scenes, but usually wholesalers find you, not the other way around.
Absolutely.
So you'll just get out of the blue, hey, do you want to work with us?
Yeah.
Okay, send me a list. So you get the list of everything they have and start looking for those big red flags first.
Right.
We get a lot of those.
I got one, I'm not gonna say where I met this person, but this person, and they said, hey, we're starting this wholesale company, we'd really like to work with you. And I said, send me a list and a link to your website. And here's a good red flag. Their website had also the ability for the consumer to order direct. Right, that's a red flag. I don't buy from competitors. So if you are starting out as a wholesaler and you're also going to have a website where you're going to sell fish to the end user, I'm sorry, you're not going to sell fish for me.
Pick one.
Pick one.
I
Here's
saw
a good
one-
way to think of it.
I saw one person who pulled it off in a way that I thought, okay, maybe I'm okay with it.
Really?
He was charging almost double, his retail was almost double what our retail would have been for his wholesale prices. Like, if you're pricing yourself out and you're like, you really wanna buy from me, you're gonna pay through the nose for it though, because I don't want a box of fish, I want a box 50 of them.
I think I would be okay with that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It's really a matter of respect almost at that point where, you're trying to sell to us as if we're retail customers.
Right.
I also feel the need to say that his website specifically said, if you don't wanna pay these prices, talk to your local fish store.
That would be well done, so I was on thinking, that's good.
I do remember having one list come in, that came to like the main contact email first, they had tattooed fish list on there, and I emailed about it, and I said, no, we can't order from you, I'm not ordering from you with these on your list. And he emailed back, oh, sorry, no, that was a mistake, they're not supposed to be there. And I'm like, okay, well, when I see a list that doesn't have them on it, then maybe we'll talk. And the next week we get another list, and he says, okay, are you guys ready to order now? No, we're still not ready to order. Maybe when those things come off that list, we'll talk. Eventually, I think it probably took him like 3 or 4 months before he gave up trying to contact me directly.
Wow.
Just, sorry, don't do that.
Deal breaker.
Yeah.
Looking at the specials that a wholesaler offers is a really good way to do it. And the specials that I'm not quite sure how to say that, but the specials have to actually be special. If you have a special on head and tail light tetras and albino cory cats and common plecos, and that's like your special, you're probably not the wholesaler for those. And those aren't necessarily things that if I see on the list, I'm gonna go, no, I'm not gonna order from you. But if that's gonna be your focus.
If you give discounts by the 1,000 for feeder fish,
Right.
that's another, well, it's not gonna be you're out, but
Yeah.
probably not a good sign.
It's not looking good for you.
I wanna touch on, and Ben, you can chime in if you want. I love the multiple times that you have basically told saltwater wholesale to screw off because they're like, we have a special on clear wrasses.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
We have a special on death this week.
Exactly.
Would you like to kill something?
Or that trend recently that made its way to our store just by word of mouth, that somebody was giving away free Mandarin dragonettes.
Yeah.
with
That was-
purchases.
Let's say one of the biggest online places to buy saltwater fish was doing that special.
That's a red flag.
And I know somebody who went through 4 before he finally decided to say, please don't send me one.
Yeah.
That's depressing.
Yep.
Woof.
There's some bets.
Last question from Kevin. He says, what question are you surprised that more people don't ask when you visit your store?
How do you quarantine your fish?
Yeah.
I wish
Yeah.
Yeah.
people wanted to know.
I think the lack of questions about the importance of quarantine is surprising. I think that we've been so public about it in the West Michigan area that at this point, most hobbyists are at least somewhat aware of quarantine, and that not enough people actually care, is the present.
Every hobbyist who's been in for any length of time has been burned.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
I
Usually right at the start.
yeah,
Yeah.
so like, learn from your mistakes.
If you don't care, you either haven't been burned or you're dumb. What is the other alternative there?
You don't care.
You don't care.
You don't care. And I think the person who said they went through 4 dragonettes before they said stop sending them, I think it's pretty common for people to have the concept. And I've even read this in books where authors have suggested, make sure that a store has a guarantee in case your fish doesn't survive, right? And I go back to the puppy thing, right? Make sure your store has a guarantee on your puppy, just in case in the off chance your puppy dies, so you can return it and get a different one. I know fish are not puppies, but the mentality that fish are expendable.
Yeah.
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 That's
There are
the problem.
some regulars even that I actually really like as people that have that mentality, and it makes it really hard to be excited with them. They might be doing really cool stuff, but they treat their animals like, I'll replace them. Oh, I know I maybe shouldn't have done that, but I'll replace them. And that colors you in a certain light.
Yep, I agree.
I've always been surprised more people don't ask where the fish come from. Because I feel like that's something I'd be really curious about.
Yeah.
And then I'll see somebody who has been a regular for ages and will have something labeled as wild caught, and they're like, ooh, that makes me uncomfortable. Like, dude, half your fish are wild caught. What are you talking about?
I have an interesting side note that I don't think I share with anybody
No?
on that topic. We had a shop hop prior to this convention that we were just speaking about, where we had a bunch of killifish nerds, I'll say, come in. Good people. And somebody asked me, without giving away specifics, said, is your wholesaler blank because all of these killies indicate that they came from blank?
Was he right?
He was right.
Wow.
He was right.
You can definitely tell.
Some staples, if you will. Yeah.
Well, it's a unique list. Maybe we should cut that part out of the official video.
It's the only wholesaler I know of that has an extensive killifish list.
Right.
It's the only wholesaler I know that has more than one.
Mm-hmm.
And this was somebody who
Yeah,
spent
more than a golden wonder.
Yeah.
many, many years buying and caring for killies, so he's, very versed in the.
Yeah, if I went to a store, I could tell almost immediately if they used our wholesaler.
It's true.
I thought that was interesting though, right?
Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Alright. Question from Derek A.
Sorry, this is just, I can't say for the United States.
North America.
Oh,
Is that phosphorus necrosis?
you guys are ready? I'll go.
There you go.
Our
Okay,
bars.
so actually,
Oh, did I just say that
you
instead
did.
of? Oh,
You did.
that's hilarious.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's really hot in here.
It's really not that.
Sorry, guys.
My Formosa, sorry. My
Heterangia
Heterangia
Formosa.
Formosa. That was a really funny stuff.
Yeah, Neohedra elegans are technically, so I actually just did a whole bunch of reading on them.
Yeah.
And the original descriptions showed them going into Panama. And I don't think they actually do that. So technically, I think they are just a South American fish. So if we're saying North American, I'm probably going to go with, probably one of those Xiphophorus species. No, I'm not. I'm going to go with cutthroat trout.
Well, that's a good one.
Yeah.
I-
In preface, Aquarium.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If I'm going,
I saw a really cool cutthroat trout aquarium at a fly shop in Dillon, Colorado.
Sweet.
Was it the size of a bus?
Will you hit that power button on the AC? Is it off?
Yeah, it is.
Turn that on.
if we're going salmonids,
Thank you.
I feel the need to bring up Arctic ray. What a wacky looking
They're
fish.
cool. Yeah. If you're gonna make me say aquarium fish, there's a fun in the species that call their shellfish fish. It's a regular, not fun.
That makes more sense.
Yeah. That's like really cool.
If you won't stop talking about regulus.
I vote rainbow shiners.
That's a good
It's a
one.
good chance. The pygmy sunfish group is pretty fun too, but I don't want to keep them, so.
I also
Sorry,
really
call
like
them a favorite.
convicts.
Yeah. Yeah.
Alright, moving on.
Yep.
Here's a question from Albert B. What are the team's opinions on non-photosynthetic corals and other filter feeding organisms? In my humble opinion, both salt and freshwater filter feeders are amazing and only suitable for advanced aquarium keepers.
Yeah, exactly
I-
that.
yeah.
They really make an eye-catching display. We did kind of talk about filter feeders a little earlier.
I completely agree. When I was diving in Thailand, it was amazing to me to see the amount of filter feeding organisms scattered all over the reef. And that pointed to some pretty significant things. The biggest one being the amount of food that's available on the board is incredible. So I think it was it you and I that were talking about it? Like, you know, we think we're trying to mimic no, maybe it was Calder. We were trying to mimic, a little piece of nature.
No, we're not.
We're not anywhere close to it. Yeah.
No, it was me.
It was you?
Yeah, it
Okay, yeah, the amount of food available on a coral reef is absolutely outrageous, and the biggest challenge that we have as coral reef aquarium keepers is managing food supply.
Charles and I were chatting that freshwater aquarists are kind of sort of starting to replicate some natural habitats. Saltwater, not even
No.
Not even close.
And I think we're decades away from
Yeah.
mimicking that. And just because the amount of food, we don't have a magic food. I mean, the aggression that we deal with in a reef aquarium is because of food resources,
Yeah.
right? I say that because when you think of, like, what are some of the most aggressive fish in a coral reef aquarium? And it's damselfish, right? And you just can't keep them together. But if you go look at groups of damselfish in the wild, they are this concentrated mass. Like, you'll see this coral head that's not 2.5 feet across with 25 damselfish all living in that coral. And the reason that they're living together in that coral successfully is because they have plenty. So that was kind of a long version of, yep, I agree. Advanced.
I was able to strike a bit of like a decent balance with filter feeders for a few months, but it was a 40-gallon tank, no fish, was feeding a baby brine cube like every other day, and everything I had in there could handle nitrates from 40 to 60, but that's what they always were.
Yeah.
There's gonna be a little bit of algae in that, but everything was healthy enough. That's just not the tank people want though, right? So you kind of have to figure out what exactly you want.
I remember reading about a really successful sun coral, which terrestrial is used for really beautifully colored, non-photosynthetic clothes. And this person had, their display was a little bit less than 40 gallons, and their sump was about 700 gallons.
Oh, that'd be a great way to
Right.
go.
So they would twice a day shut off the flow to the sump, and then flood the tank with food.
Oh, I see what this is.
Right. And then turn the filtration back on sometime later, and it was just massive amounts of circulation. I think it just completely flushed it.
That's awesome.
That's essentially what I was doing on a way tinier
Yeah.
scale.
So go back to the bamboo shrimp question.
Yeah.
That's how you do
That's how you do it.
Yeah.
it. That's cool. I've never heard of that.
Yeah. It was cool.
I got a super short question for Brian S.
Okay.
And it's gonna be a super short answer. Can you keep clown killifish and cribs together?
No.
No.
The cribs have to go get too big to eat them,
Yeah.
and they will eat them up.
If it fits.
If it's yeah. I think you could pull off some of the nanochroma species with adult, some of them, not all of them, but with adult pumpkins. I think that's possible. But none of the public ones.
You could do Anthocenians.
Yeah.
A lot
I
of
think that would be
people-
the way to go.
Yeah.
That'd be
And
fun.
you could do Epiplas de Gea.
Oh, I bet Singa would be big enough too.
Yeah, that's true.
Basically anything bigger than a clown
Right,
jelly.
yeah.
Companies are there.
It's a nice idea though.
Yeah, it would be cool.
It would be cool.
Here's a question from Justin, another good friend of ours. I don't get this reference, but hopefully somebody will. He says, quote, "What is your favorite way to shock the basement monkey?"
Telling him there's a leak and then he has to go find it.
Telling him there's an electrical current in the tank and he has to test it with his hands.
All right, so I'm just going to preface this one with who Justin is. He is been a friend of mine for years in the aquarium hobby. He was a former president of the local aquarium club, and he is a teacher. During the summers, for many years now, he comes and works part-time here in the shop. We definitely had a number of times that you know, we're getting things set up right. We had to do a little cobbling, and it's very possible that, hey, Justin, go figure out what's wrong with the system, and do this, ah! And that would be Justin.
It's
And
just
then-
we got a pile of junk in the basement. Will you just plug it all in and make sure it doesn't shock you?
Right. It also corresponds with the higher Coralia circulation pumps, which iffy. Those things were notorious for giving people shocks. And the way to figure out, right, if you've got a 1,200 gallon system with 37 different things plugged into it, and you have to try and figure out which one of those things is shocking you.
And 10% of them did.
Right. Yeah, Allie over there is raising her hand going, yep, I know what that's all about. Yep, we've right. So yeah.
He went through all the tanks 1 year and took out all the Corellias, got everything working, got new fresh pumps in there, and then came back a year later and was like, why are they all back?
So what's the best way to shock the monkey? A Corelia.
I haven't gotten over, I think the most judged I've ever felt by Amy was the time that, like, you and I were trying to figure out in one of the QT systems what was shocking us, and we were like, it's your turn to get shocked. No, it's your turn to get shocked. And Amy comes down in the middle of this argument. Yep. Just, that's all there is to that story. We were just being stupid.
Being the Three Stooges about
Unplug
it.
one thing, stick your finger in the thing, didn't you get a shock? Yep, that wasn't it. Plug that back in, plug something else.
We've all been.
Justin, thanks, Justin. We'll see you in a week.
We miss you.
We wonder why we only get a couple weeks.
That's right. Where he gets that twitch.
That was from working here, actually. That's from retail.
Here's a couple questions from Mark W. Can you change water in the aquarium too frequently?
No.
How about in
Yeah.
a tank you are cycling?
Yes.
Yes. But in a cycle tank, I've seen people do 90% water changes every day.
Yeah, and
It's fine.
Yeah. You can get to the point where your nutrients are so low you struggle to grow stuff, but at that point, doing more water changes isn't going to make a difference.
so I'm
Yeah.
gonna answer it this way. You cannot mess it up by changing too frequently. You can mess it up by changing too inconsistent.
Yeah.
Or too large.
I was gonna say, I don't think the water changes are the problem. I think that's when people growl that too much.
Or not
Yeah.
enough, or
Yeah.
don't gravel back and then do.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
If you don't do a water change on your tank for a year and then do 90% water changes every day, you're gonna mess everything up.
Your beneficial bacteria don't live in the water column. They live
Right.
on surfaces. If you're,
Yeah.
I've almost slipped up there. If you're screwing with all of your
Charles.
surface areas,
Yeah.
all your surface areas, you're going to mess up your bacteria. But if you're just pulling water, who cares?
If you want to increase the frequency of your water changes, do it, increase it slowly. If you're doing 10% every 2 weeks and you want to do massive water changes, increase by 10% or so over the course of some amount of time.
And when we obtain maintenance people, the planted tanks don't really get water changes because they don't have fish in them. And then when we get another maintenance person to get them, and then all the creeks melt.
Yeah. Yep.
Next question from Mark. Can fish that don't require a heater handle a room temperature fluctuation of 10 degrees Fahrenheit?
Which fish?
Which fish is a good question.
Yeah.
Of course, it's variable, but let's narrow it down, kind of. Fish that don't require a heater that are common in the first
It was what? Didn't they take a variation of 10 degrees per day?
per day, so the basement fluctuates from 61 to 73.
His basement does that because aquariums probably don't.
Buffers a little bit.
Yeah.
So probably safe.
I think Amy said it right, which fish?
Yeah.
White clouds? Sure.
Rosy bar? Sure.
Sure.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if your tank was going back full 10 degrees. That would probably be sweet.
Yeah.
Water has a high thermal inertia. It's hard to change the temperature of water. Like, let's talk about the fact, we've talked many times about heaters are the one piece of equipment that fails. That's because that thing is working, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yep.
Yeah, send us a follow-up email on the species of fish you keep.
Yeah.
Can help narrow that down. Question from Aaron P. long-time listener and wait for a podcast to grow.
So,
Awesome.
thank
I've
you.
been considering saltwater, but one question I have is about keeping coral. And how does one responsibly care for a creature that will outlive them? Do you write it into your will? Is this something reefers or other aquarium clubs can help with?
That's, that's a really good one,
Question.
and that might just be the question of the day. Because we're really big around here about, you don't buy a fish that's gonna outgrow your tank with the expectation that you're just gonna get rid of it.
Long term.
Right. But when it comes to a coral, technically, if you care for it correctly, all of them are going to. So then you have to break that down a little bit, and you can get a little technical and say, what is a coral? It is not an organism. It is a group of organisms. More like with plants, going to find new homes for your coral as it gets too big, which technically it didn't get too big. It multiplied too much. And the colony got big. The colony got big. And as one would say with, say, a colony of guppies, you can keep guppies even though the colony of guppies is probably going to outgrow your tank. I think you can say that with coral. And I think you can say that without saying, I'm finding a loophole. I think you're doing it right by saying, I'm going to keep my coral for a while, then find new homes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's about the ultimate responsibility more than anything. If somebody has an aquarium set up and they decide they want to do a new project, do I judge them for passing their previous project onto someone else that they know is going to take care of it? Onto a fish store that they know is responsible, who's going to rehome it to somebody else? No, I don't judge that really at all. It's about having that responsibility and not just sure more than it is about needing to keep something for its entire lifespan. It's about being prepared to keep something well throughout its lifespan.
I could say this, if somebody is willing to ask that question, no, you're good.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
care that much, thank you. And no, I don't think you have to write it into your will. Corals are fragment-traded on a regular basis. I think that's it.
I will say, based on previous experience with people who have passed away and their families do have to decide what to do with their aquariums, it is, if you're thinking about writing a will, it is a nice thing to do. To let them know what to do with the stuff, because it's a pretty big responsibility to leave on somebody.
Shout out to a late customer named Cheryl. She actually wrote her aquarium into her will to me.
Is it that one?
It's that one in the corner.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, we've even had roommates and dropping off fish or stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's just part of life.
Right.
Oh, what a downer.
but it's pretty sweet though too.
It's
sweet.
Like,
It is so
that's
sweet.
the kind of care that we like to hear about. So thank you.
I hope it's something that you deal with long before it becomes a problem and you're in a retirement home long before you just die and you have to leave your fish to
Yeah.
somebody.
Here's a question from Joe K. Any favorite stories on the personality of the fish? Any unexpected friendships or sworn enemies?
Everybody's got a clownfish story. Right? By the way, sworn enemy, not friend.
Yes. No, nobody befriends a clownfish, let's be honest.
You just serve her needs.
Yeah. I think probably if I had to pick one, that cinnamon clownfish female we had, that I think she's on her 5th owner now.
Yeah.
She would be 15 years old now.
Yeah.
And when we last got her in, she had a male, and then he died. It's just, life expectancy for those fish is 15, 20 years. Okay, sure.
He was old.
He was old, but I wanted to give her a partner, and we only had young cinnamon clowns, and I was just like, okay, fine. They're probably 8 months old. And so I tried a few, and she wasn't into any of them. And then several months later, we got in a batch of cinnamon clowns, and I pulled them out of QT, and one of them in a bare tank managed to hide from me. And I had this kind of like almost vindictive, like, you know what, if you're smart enough to outsmart me, maybe you're smart enough to get this chick to like you. So I scooped him out, put him in, and she immediately said, this one's mine. And I was just like, of course.
It wasn't even the first time we tried to pair her either.
No, it was probably our third or fourth. And yeah, that's the male she went home with.
This is the one. He hates Charles too.
Yeah, he already knows what's up.
That's a good one.
I remember you told a story once about a batfish that you found. Did I remember that right? I know it's kind of a sad story, right?
Bruce the Batfish. Bruce was this was a classic.
I just caught something that I don't think I've ever caught. Did you name him Bruce
Yes.
Wayne?
Yes.
Yes! You just got that now.
I just got that. I
Wow.
don't read comic books.
Yeah, but you're nerdy enough to know who Batman is.
I guess.
Yes.
Charles just now getting the realization that Batman is Bruce Wayne in this podcast.
Yeah.
Yes. And Charles has only heard about Bruce for how long have I known you? 6 years?
It's
Yeah.
gotta be, yeah.
Close.
Right. Yes, Bruce was a batfish. Bruce was a classic example of why aquarium stores have the responsibility to give good advice. This was a customer, this was probably 10 years ago, a customer who went to their local fish store and said, I want a fish, I want to do it right, I want a fish that can do well in my 100-gallon tank. And they sold him not a big
Bananas?
bananas bag. No, not,
No.
yeah, or big,
Orbicula.
or big batfish. That was about 3 inches across. This is the fish for you for your 100-gallon tank. Well, a big batfish was about 18 inches in diameter. And this person did everything as right as could be and trusted his LFS. And he came into the store and said, I've had this fish for about 8 months and I've learned more about this fish, watching how it's growing, and realizing I can't do this right. And we had a 240-gallon quarter-cylinder tank with a couple of sharks in it. And I said, we can take this fish and, this isn't big enough either, but we can do the best we can for this fish. And he said thank you and gave us this fish. The way this tank was set up, you could hand feed this fish very easily. You could lean on the tank and look over and hang it with Bruce. So I got to know Bruce really well. Bruce was a very, very cool fish. And you pet him, hand feed him, and when you pet him, he would come back for more. So it wasn't just like this, look, I got to touch him. It was like, he appreciated, I don't think it was affection, probably just, that's an itchy spot, thank you for getting it. I want to recognize all of those things. But Bruce definitely would, I bonded with Bruce. And one day, 2 or 3 years later, Bruce would jump out. And he's one of 2 fish that I actually shaved.
Just one.
There are 2 that I have. Yeah, just one tier, that was it.
Yeah.
Yeah, just one. Yeah, but one of 2 fish that I shaved. So that's right. Yep.
It's so sweet that you got that time. Bruce wouldn't have gotten those years.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. I dove
He
in.
was on borrowed time.
Yeah, I should post the video. I dove in Thailand back in November, and when you scuba dive, at the end of your dive, you go to about 15 feet and do what's called a 5-minute safety stop. And you just hang out there for 5 minutes to let the pressure changes happen, and that's all chemistry going on. No, but you sit there for 5 minutes, 15 feet underwater, and this group of batfish came over and said hi. And one of them in particular circled and got close. I didn't get to pet him, but I think it was somebody saying, hey dude, I knew Bruce too, thanks for taking care of me. So, it was pretty cool.
Alright, guys, I gotta pee.
Okay.
Should I be bringing up beers? I'll bring up one for me. Anybody else?
Sure.
Raise your hand. Robbie. Beer, cider? What are you doing? Beer. Beer?
There's only beer left
One?
besides your
Okay, so 4, right? 1, 2,
Yep.
3, 4.
Bye. Oh wait, people are still watching us. Hi.
I know.
How many are watching?
13.
13?
Yeah.
Alright, that's pretty good.
Peaked at like 30,
30.
then dropped down.
Fantastic. We got to 30 for a while, that's good.
We're at an hour and a quarter.
That's a long time.
It's over here.
Yeah, I think we might,
Biology.
how many more listener questions you got?
5-ish.
Okay, I think probably that's good.
Charles.
Yeah, and then we'll just do that
Remember
as a different one. Oh, we won't be here for that. That's good.
That was
that. More of that, or yeah, just.
Remember Barry?
Yeah.
Barry the birdfish.
I
Yeah,
got it.
perfect.
Yes, that was your fish day.
I did
Lumpy the anglerfish. Lumpy.
I wish we could get another lumpy.
Cheers.
Bye.
Thanks, Ally.
Yeah, I'll tell that story. There was a birdfish that we had. Didn't that go home with somebody that we know? Do you recall?
Yes, and I can't remember who it was. But it was a wet birdfish.
Yeah, it was a great little fish. I fed him or her in QT for 4 weeks. And it started as a fish that was a little hesitant to eat. Not for long, as most public fishing loves, but
Yeah.
I ended up feeding it from a syringe, never a bottle fed fish. Twice a day. It was great. I have a video somewhere where I put the syringe in and he kind of position himself and grab onto the end. And he would eat a whole syringe worth of mysis in one go.
There. That is a classic example to me of a fish that, there's a fish that's common in the hobby and should be in the hobby because there's a right? The porcupine is a fish that's pretty readily available. Did that just disconnect my phone?
For a half second.
Okay. There we go. So the porcupine puffer is a readily available fish that is 3 feet long. Nobody ever uses that fish, right? Web birdfish is about 8 inches. They're a little cooler looking. They've got the spikes. They've got all the personality. It's an incredible
Venture
porcupine, as opposed to web birdfish.
And at that time, they're almost interchangeable. So why would we?
Exactly. Yeah. I think we need
Oh.
more.
I got 4.
We had an extra, so we're good. I think.
Oh, good.
Somebody
Oh,
has.
we're good.
Of course, I can grab the one that needs to be open.
You got it? Did you have one of these last night, or did you have one of those?
I had one of these last times, but I have no preference.
That one might be warmish. It's been up here.
I'll take it.
That's fine.
I'm leaving and the company wants to talk, so
I can't open it, your bottle with most objects.
One of your many hidden talents. I can open it with my beer bottle.
Not really what's impressive.
But, impressive.
I'm not.
Okay. That could be a fun top 5 list. Look, the top 5 fish that, why would you keep this fish when you could keep this one
Yeah.
instead?
That's the alternatives.
Yeah.
Cider barbs and every other barbs.
Yeah.
How are we on questions? Are we cranking through?
He said we've got about 5
We've
left.
got about 5, I'd say, unless some people have kind of 2-3-parters, which I haven't seen them do, but we do have some staff questions that if we get to the end, that she'll want to know.
Or we could do that as
That's true. We might want to at this point. We're already at an hour and a half.
Yeah.
Keep the people wanting.
Yeah.
One more.
I like it.
Yeah, we can do staff questions next week.
Yeah. Are we ready for the next one?
Yes.
Yes, let's go.
Jacob H. asks, when I hear people ask about how many fish can I put in X amount of gallons of water, I always hear people talking about nitrates and water changes. I don't hear people often talk about the physical space that a fish needs to be in. As a classic example, I could exist in a Coke closet or something with water, but that's not a good life. Do you think as a hobby we focus too much on water quality and we physical imagery out of it?
Actually, I think it's the opposite.
We use that as a good
Yeah.
frame of reference when people ask, I have this, this, and this, can I squeeze anything else in there?
But I would say most people are a little bit too legalistic on like literal footprint and don't look enough at water quality.
Yeah, I was about to say, like, everyone's like, put your bed in a 10 gallon. No one talks about water quality.
Yeah, exactly.
I think, but getting to the point of his question though, I think goes a little bit beyond that. I think the point of his question is, it goes back to the example that I often cite with, I can't remember what his name is, he's the former editor of, David Brokens, the former editor of Tropical Fish Hobbies. This is going back into the mid-90s, right? He had a 75-gallon aquarium with 11 Oscars, 11 full-grown, full-size Oscars, which many people would say, that's too many. But he did 95% water changes on that tank every single day. His water quality was perfect. And so I think what Jacob's question is leading to there is, if you put 100 Oscars in a 75-gallon tank, and it was a flow-through system, where the water quality was always perfect, is that too much? Are you not paying that attention? And I think I would argue, absolutely, yes, there is definitely a point.
Yeah.
But then you have to get back to the fact that there are 35,000 species of fish, and with some that's going to matter, and with some it's not.
I think that's a great example though too, because like this tank size is a ridiculously complicated question. Like as humans, we want to put rules on it, we want it to fit into these neat little boxes, but it just can't. I think a tank with 3 Oscars of 75 is more overstocked than one with 11, because 3 Oscars, one of them's gonna die. 11 Oscars, one of them's not.
That's true.
Right? So
Yeah.
it's just, there's so many factors in there about how to make fish happy. You
Yeah.
just kind of have to figure it out as you go.
Someone sent us a question in there that I think is relevant to this, that we should cover.
Okay, if you're going to do that, so just do it on the microphone and do it as a thing.
Yeah, like interact with switch.
Yeah,
Well, I wanna see if Nick can find it first.
Okay.
yeah, but we can all hear you. That's all, that was my point.
But like on the other hand, when people are talking about like, okay, an Oscar needs at least a 75, if you scaled that down to smaller fish and said they need an equal amount of relative room, then the whole tank size question gets flipped on its head.
Yeah. Overall, I think the question is a little bit too theoretical. Right?
Yeah.
And if you had a Tic Tac box with a neon tetra that was floating, right? Water quality perfect, is that an appropriate place for
No, not really.
it? No. Okay, so then I'm just trying to break it down into
Yeah.
an example that's a little bit more real world. So the overcrowding of an African cichlid aquarium.
Mhm.
Again, I would go with no, that's not a bad thing. And that goes right back to what I was saying about the damsels on the coral coral.
Yeah, that's a
Right.
good example.
If you could, a coral reef is a freaking crowded place. Way more overcrowded than a coral reef. But the middle of the Amazon River doesn't have that fish concentration. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so I'm gonna read this question if Nick's okay with that. It's kind of long, but it's relevant to this point here. So he says, I find the debate around tank sizes for bettas very interesting. While I agree with you guys that this new standard of bettas needing 5-10 gallons is not really based on any evidence, I think some of your reasoning is flawed. That is, bettas have been domesticated and bred as ornamental or fighting fish for a long time. They're far removed from their wild-type counterparts. The argument that just because wild-type bettas live and reproduce in small bodies of water does not mean our pet bettas should as well. Another reason why we shouldn't model their natural environment is that wild-type bettas don't live very long. You're right in that people have focused so much on the tank size that they neglect other important factors like aquarium depth and enrichment. However, for the average betta keeper, the advice that they would need a bigger tank is best, since it's already tough convincing people they need a thermometer, yada yada yada, all this equipment in a tank that size.
It's a good point.
There's a good point there. Your argument is flawed.
Okay, do you go for, because I have a big flaw. You go with the big flaw first.
I'll let you go first.
Okay, so have you ever seen the videos of how water changes are done on some of the domestic betta breeders in Thailand?
Mhm.
Yeah,
In the Coke bottles,
yeah,
Yeah.
right? Where they're actually, they build this valved hose attachment, and they walk on the Coke bottles and like spray the water changes in. So the statement about these are different than wild bettas. Yes, they have been bred in even smaller systems. They've been raised in even smaller systems. that emotional development. So, where's the flaw there? Is the flaw that these are domestic bred, so they're used to more, or they're domestic bred, so we should pay more attention to it? Like which?
Yeah.
Right.
See, the flaw for me here
Okay.
is that you're 100% correct, Ben, and it's an amazing argument, and I didn't go at that angle at all. A betta is still a betta.
Yeah.
Think about your dog.
Right.
Think about the weird wolfy things that this has been far removed from a wolf for at least 20,000 years.
Yeah.
And we can't breed that urge to howl, that urge. That's still there.
Yeah. What is the wolf count in Yellowstone? Is it 55? We have to have someone who spent some time as working with a wildlife.
Don't say that
adventure
because
company.
I don't have the number handy, but I thought it was closer to 100.
Okay. 100 in Yellowstone. Now let's look at the dog concentration in the area of Yellowstone in the average city. By the way, way more than 100.
Yeah.
So,
Like care for a wolf and a care for a dog is different. You're not wrong. But it's still tainted.
yes. And when it comes to space, how do you want to argue that, right?
Yeah.
So, the flaw in the arguments, no, I'm sorry, I'm going to disagree. I think our arguments there when we're talking about the spaces for wild type versus domestic, that is.
I would even argue this.
Yeah.
I think captive bettas need even less space. They have bigger fins.
Yeah, they don't swim
That's
very
true,
well.
they're bad at swimming.
They're bad at swimming.
No, I actually get the issue that I think he's having with that anecdote, because I've kind of had that same thought of, well, yes, they can survive in these areas, but as aquarists, we're not trying to replicate stress conditions where this is something they can survive. We're trying to come up with an ideal situation. But I think the part of what we're actually trying to get at with this isn't, okay, yeah, you should put your betta in a vase. It's, let's start with good husbandry, let's start with a good tank, and it's not worth it to gatekeep somebody on 2.5 gallons worth versus 5, because the betta can be perfectly happy either way,
Yeah.
right? Just because they can live in the top of a coconut tree doesn't mean you should put your betta on the top of a coconut tree, but it does mean they're not suffering in a 1 gallon tank. It means that they can get it.
Well said.
And
Yeah, well said.
people ignore. People are going to hate this argument. And,
This is a touchy subject.
yeah,
It is,
and I know.
Yeah.
It's a hot
People
subject.
ignore the fact that as biological organisms, we are designed to need some stress. Think about,
Yes.
so exercise, that's a stress. Your body is responding like you are going to die.
Yes.
Like all of these things, like ideal conditions for humans are a high fat, high carb diet. That's what we're evolved to figure out how to obtain. We have gotten too good at that.
If we achieve that, we die young.
Yeah, like stress is like
Ooh.
yeah,
Right.
like we have gotten so good at removing environmental stresses that anxiety disorders are more common, in part because we are so good at trying to solve problems that we're making them ourselves internally.
But if you break that down to a fish,
Yeah,
a pistos, try to breed a pistos without dinners.
yeah,
You know what
Yeah.
the female's gonna do? She's gonna eat her babies because she doesn't have anyone to defend those babies from.
yeah.
Sometimes you can get a pair of cichlids to bond by putting in some territorial fish in with them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like it.
Yeah, so all in all, the betta tank size conversation is one I don't really want to be a part of.
But I agree that I would rather somebody err on the side of a larger tank than necessary than a smaller tank than necessary, of course.
I would rather people err towards a tank that works,
But stop,
regardless of the size.
stop being the aquarium police.
The betta cups at the big box stores, no, that's terrible.
Mhm.
Start to get into the 1 gallon range and we can talk.
Yeah, and there's a huge difference between putting something in a milk jug and putting something in a planted bowl with a good 8 inches to swim back and forth and interesting stuff in there. I think they'd rather be in that 1 gallon bowl than a 10 gallon empty bear tank.
Okay, no, we thank you for the question, though.
Yeah.
That's a very good question.
You bet.
Yeah.
And we're not disagreeing with you per se.
Right.
No, I think we're arguing the same thing from different angles.
We were talking about pistols briefly. I have some questions here from Ryan S.
Cool.
I think this is our last set of questions.
All right.
So this is specifically speaking about breeding of pistols. What are our thoughts on trios? I have 2 females and 1 male. They pasteurize and consider putting them all together.
And pasteurized are a great trio species.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
is species dependent, yeah.
It is very
Species.
much species.
So let me continue. 1 female and 1 male have bred and they're currently with fry. The other females are set the same. And the trio would work in the future. Or even just moving the male back and forth between the females.
Yeah, they don't seem to form true pair bonds in this species.
I think I like the idea of moving the male back and forth
Yeah.
more than putting them all together.
Sure.
Yeah, depending on tank size.
Yeah.
My only thing there is, if what you're doing is working, don't change it.
Very.
But, yeah, if that pair is successful, then switch them back and forth, but if it's not, maybe a trio is it.
Off the top of my head, I don't know exactly which ones are pair specific and which are trio specific.
Panderos are
Panderos
great
are.
pair specific.
Pair
They,
specific.
like, they, almost to the point where I've sometimes been convinced that they will not take another partner. Like, we have had females just after they lose a male to snake pair.
But I do remember you researching McMaster, right, specifically, that's one that does well. It's
Yeah.
Trios or narrows.
And there was an Amazonist article of like a guy doing it specifically. I don't remember which issue. A while back.
There's a second
It's
part
like
to this.
way back when you were keeping McMaster, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
He's also curious about our thoughts on removing the male if the eggs are laid or fried here. Is there a time when you would remove both male and female?
Again, species dependent. So a lot of the Apistos species, the male doesn't actually, like a lot of people get a perception that Apistos males have fry pair. They do not. What they do have is they defend a territory, and a lot of these territories overlap with the females in the wild. So indirectly, he's protecting them just because they happen to be where he's at. And his thing is he defends the ground, they're on the ground. So anything coming at it from above is just going to get whaled out regardless. But that's not his goal.
I would come at it from a slightly different perspective. And just to be
Sorry.
We're talking about when to remove males
thank you
or
very much.
females.
Okay, so yes, so and I think this goes to a conservation sense and a what are you trying to get out of this breeding pair? So if you have a successful breeding pair and they start breeding, once that switch is flipped, they're going to produce a batch on a pretty periodic basis. It's going to take a lot to turn that whole switch back on. So I would say, if it was me, I would have my pair of pistos and see how long they're going to keep the fry. If they make it for 30 days and they keep the fry, and then all of a sudden you get to experience that amazing sight where you see the bright yellow female pistil leading this group of fry around,
There's nothing like it.
I love that. Keep them that long. If you fail, if you keep them too long, chances are really good they're going to go again there in just a couple of weeks, right? Remove them 3 days earlier next time. But see how long you can get it. If your goal is to, I want to experience what it's like to watch a pistos go through that process.
Yeah.
If you are going for numbers, get really good at raising a pisto fry and remove eggs. That's going to get your highest percentage and most likely regular.
That's a great point.
I might set Charles off with this comment, but I remember he recently spoke on, not Pisto specifically, but the debate of do I intervene and separate the adults from the fry, or do I let the parents raise the fry? And he says the parents will have a batch of fry, and they'll eat them, and then they will give up, and they'll be discouraged. And Charles is like, it takes many, many times. Like, it's not just one go.
They need to learn that if I eat them, they go away. Like,
Object permanence.
yeah, it's something that new parents just often have to deal with. First couple of ones are gonna be a dud.
make this example anywhere else, but in this
Hey, I'm a
context.
firstborn child. Make whatever judgments you want to make
Yeah,
based
you
off
guys
that.
you always start with a mistake and then
Exactly.
you
That's why me, as the youngest child, turned out far better.
That's why we're perfect.
Yeah.
I think the youngest child, I mean, they just like, whoa, we should have stopped sooner.
No,
Middle
that's-
kids are the best.
That's, yeah, the youngest child is where they just give up and they just get to do anything.
That's all the ones in the middle.
I'm lawless.
I don't want to call out my coworker, but I recently had an interaction where I was like, I can tell you're the youngest sibling.
I think breeding cichlids, particularly opistos, it's gonna be a little bit random what happens. Your pair is gonna work how they work, follow what works, and get rid of what doesn't.
But don't be afraid to let them fail a few times to kind of
Yeah.
feel it out.
Yeah, the first couple times probably won't work, I think, regardless of the opisto.
I actually received, here in the shop, I received a pair of Panduro that had supposedly bred very well for a while in somebody's home aquarium. And I now have separated them and have intentionally tried to breed them, and they failed twice. So just that change, I almost reset them. They're not gorgeous.
And they're definitely getting real flirty down there again.
They are.
Yeah.
Yeah. That is kind of where we're going to end. That is just about all of the submitted questions. We have some staff questions that I think we'll save for separate episodes.
Yeah,
I think that's the way to do it. Yeah.
Well, we do still have a handful of people still watching. Do we want to do, like, wrap up and end, or do we want to see if they have any questions first?
Yeah, if you're still watching, you want to follow up with something, or let's get some feedback.
Fire them off. You'll have a quick chance here to do so.
Yeah, we haven't been getting a ton of chiming in, but there's still about a dozen people in there.
And just so you all know, if you're listening, I'm going to do some pauses before we do the close. And if this part gets boring, we're going to edit it out. So if you want your question to be part of the full podcast, no pressure.
Oh, 3 people just dropped out.
And also, if you're still listening, we like you better.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's right.
But we'll give it a couple minutes to see if there are any questions of people who are on there. And then we'll wrap up.
Thanks for hanging out with us.
Yeah, this was a lot of fun. I like doing this. So we have a fun little side thing that we can, this will get edited out, but those people still listen. Part of the reason that we scheduled this at this time is Nick is taken off this summer on a very cool adventure. He is going to be back in the fall, he promises, or he'll get in trouble.
Or they'll get eaten by grizzly bears.
Yeah.
He knows where I live.
So do the grizzly bears.
I also know who's in charge of where you're going, so.
I'm going to Alaska for the summer.
Yeah, talk about what you're doing, man. This is really cool.
Yeah, I'm going to a town called Girdwood. Kind of the closest reference point is Anchorage, and 45 minutes south of Anchorage. But I am working with some really cool guided tours to do some kind of photography and wildlife focused tours. So I will be out there helping out for a few months. I'm leaving in less than a week. This will be kind of my last hangout with all of my water friends.
Aw.
We're gonna miss you. And you're gonna get some full-time grizzly bears. So I like it. Yeah. Well, shall we wrap this up?
Yeah, I think so. Looks
All right.
like we've got some quiet people left.
All right, so here's the pause. We can edit out what we need to edit out. Well, this was a lot of fun. This was a pretty cool episode to do. I always like it when we get to interact with some of our faithful listeners, see what kind of questions they have.
It's a blast. If you still have questions, please keep emailing them in. We'd love to do another one of these. I think the goal is about once a quarter, right?
Yeah, I think that's the way to do it.
Yeah.
We will take questions indefinitely, so keep
For sure.
sending them.
Yeah, and even if you just have something that you'd like to have answered by email, you're still always welcome to email podcast@watercolorsparade.com and get those questions to us. Also, just head over to watercolorsparade.com and check out what we've got for sale.
Buy stuff.
Please.
We like it when that happens. Extra special thanks to Nick for an awesome job getting the commentating and reading those questions and filtering through the ones that you just couldn't read on the air. I know there was a bunch of those this time.
All our hate mail. You know how it goes.
Exactly, yeah.
Thanks,
That's
Nick.
how that all works. Yes, definitely do appreciate that, Nick. That your summer goes amazingly well and that you have lots of fun and don't get eaten by grizzly bears. Thank you very much for those of you who spent the last hour or so with us watching, and thank you everyone for listening. Let's have lots of fun. Keep those hands. That was fun.
That was super fun.
You wanna shut this off?
Yeah.
Good.
Bye-bye.